So for those of you who don't know, I'm Elana Frank. I run an organization called Jewish Fertility Foundation. We do three main things. One is we offer fertility grants to those struggling with infertility. We do it by city. Right now we're in Atlanta and Cincinnati, and we offer up to $15,000 of grants to be able to use fertility treatments. We also partner with an organization called the Jewish Interest-Free Loan Association in Atlanta and the Hebrew Interest-Free Loan in Cincinnati, and we offer interest-free loans of up to $7,500. With all of the fertility clinics that we work with, we offer a 20% discounted rate to our grantees. While it's very, very important to help those experiencing infertility with the funding aspect, it's almost just as important to help those experiencing infertility with the emotional side, with the emotional support. And we offer several programs. We offer free infertility support run by infertility therapists. Right now, again, it's in Atlanta and Cincinnati, but we also offer a program called our Fertility Buddies program. And that's where we match up veterans of infertility with people who are experiencing infertility today. And then the last thing we do is similar to what we're doing today with JScreen, which are our educational trainings. So we go out into the community. Now, of course, everything is virtual, and we help explain different aspects of the fertility experience, and we help those suffering from infertility really get the best treatment they can through training individuals like rabbis, but also the medical community on special needs of Jewish clients. So we work with JScreen. We love JScreen. We love Karen. And I also really want to share with you the reason that we came together and we're doing an educational event like we are today. We met each other probably about 5 years ago. Karen is a founding board member of the Jewish Fertility Foundation, and she also is a co-partner in crime with a funder of ours, the Marcus Foundation. And because we are so aligned in our mission of bringing healthy babies into the world, we really want to make sure that today and tonight we are able to give the best information and offer you different options for family building. So I do want to say that, again, I know people are signing in, signing out, and we are recording this. We did get a lot of questions prior to the event, but if you do have a specific question, feel free to just write it in the comment box and we'll do our best to get to it. So Karen, I'm going to turn it over to you, Executive Director of JScreen. And honestly, just if you can share a little bit about yourself and why JFF is important to you as well.
Sure. So I'm Karen Grinzaid. I'm actually a native Atlanta. Our JScreen program is based out of Atlanta, out of Emory University's genetics department. And I'll tell you about JScreen, but I want to start first about my connection with Jewish Fertility Fund. So our JScreen program offers genetic screening for people who are planning to have kids in the future. And the point of our program is to help people have healthy children. And the reason my involvement with JFF is so important is we want to make sure that if somebody's going through fertility treatment to have a baby, we want to help ensure that they have a healthy baby. And so our programs are really well designed because we make sure that every person coming through for fertility treatment has had genetic screening, because that information is so important in planning ahead for having a healthy child. So I don't know what other questions, Lana. I can talk a little bit.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I know you have children. Did you have genetic screening when you were prior to having, to start your family?
Okay. So my kids are in their 20s. So we have to put it in perspective. So when I was having kids, and I have Jewish background, so you did Tay-Sachs screening. Everybody did Tay-Sachs screening. We knew we had to do that. And they were just getting started with a couple of other diseases. You could do some minimal screening for cystic fibrosis and the very beginning of Gaucher disease, but that was it. And compared to now, wow, on our JScreen test, we have 226 diseases. I mean, things have changed so much over time. There's so much information available, but that's all we had.
So I remember when I mean, before I even knew I had any issues trying to conceive, I got married when I was 28 years old. We went to our local family doctor prior to getting married, and he said, okay, it's very important to get screened. And I remember we have now 9 tests that we're going to give
Wow.
to, right? So, and then even throughout the beginning of my fertility journey when I was in Israel, the doctors they asked the question, but they never like went into detail. They never asked to see the records. And it was always just those 9 tests that we were looking at. So yes, times have changed. How did JScreen get started?
You know, we got started, it was a combination of things, but what really sparked JScreen at the beginning was a Jewish family in Atlanta, Randy and Caroline Gold, who had a child with a Jewish, we call it a Jewish genetic disease. It's a disease that's more common in the Jewish community. And at that time, genetic screening was available to them ahead of time to tell them whether they were carriers for this genetic disease and whether their children would be at risk. And a very limited panel was offered to them. That test was not on the panel. They didn't know they were carriers, and they went on to have an affected child, Eden. And really their goal was to get information out there about more expanded screening being available and the importance in the Jewish community of doing more testing, doing all the testing that was available, which was still, even back then, this was back in 2010, not very many tests, not this many tests, but many more than the ones that they had done. So my background is as a genetic counselor. As a matter of fact, I was in the clinic where Eden was diagnosed. And I did a lot of work in genetics clinic in situations like that, talking to families. Parents would bring their child in. The child had a terrible problem that we diagnosed. There was nothing that could really be done except supportive care. And I spent a lot of time giving families bad news. And it was really heartbreaking to me when I knew that genetic testing would have been available to that couple before they had this child, but it just wasn't offered to them. Wow. And may have been able to have them help them have a healthy child. And I really wanted to figure out a way to get this out to the Jewish community. And we eventually started as an Atlanta pilot, and eventually we figured out how to bring a national program out there by offering testing at home, which I'll talk about. Really, it was my drive to do something around prevention.
So you mentioned Jewish. Does being Jewish make it more important to get screened? If so, why? Can you answer that a little bit?
So being Jewish makes it important to be screened. And that's not just if you're Ashkenazi Jewish. This is any Jewish background. Sephardi, Mizrahi, doesn't matter what your Jewish background is. There are diseases that are more common in each of those different groups. It's also very important to get screened if you're in an interfaith relationship. And it's important to be screened if you're not Jewish at all, because we don't know what we carry. We're all carriers for genetic diseases, and these things don't turn up unless we get a test done, and it turns up that way, or it turns up when we have an affected child. And we're really trying to step back and get that testing done so that people don't end up in a situation like that.
I think that's helpful. We hear a lot, especially with individuals who are either in interfaith couples, multi-faith couples, or who are using an egg or sperm donor, that, you know, it's okay. I don't need to be tested. I'm not using somebody Jewish. And so I'm mixing up my bloodline, but that's important to understand.
Yeah. And just really to reiterate, you know, we know of couples where one partner is Jewish and the other is not, and they've had a Tay-Sachs baby. One member of the couple is African-American and one is Caucasian, and they have a child with sickle cell disease. The screening is really important for everybody.
Okay. And why is it important to do JScreen before getting pregnant or receiving fertility treatments? Like, what happens when you get the results?
Yeah. So it is important to test. We do a huge push for people to test preconception, whether it's just a couple, you know, not even having fertility issues, but doing screening ahead of time. You can get screened while you're pregnant, but the problem is that if it turns out that you're a carrier couple, that both parents are carriers for the same disease, so then you have children, your future children who are at risk, there are many more options available to you to work around that risk if you know about it before you get pregnant.
Okay, that makes sense. Can you tell us a little bit more? What is a carrier and what happens when both partners are carriers for the same diseases?
Right. So a carrier just means that in a gene that codes for one of these diseases, we talked about some, Tay-Sachs, cystic fibrosis, sickle cell, that you have two copies of each of your genes, one from your mom, one from your dad. And being a carrier just means that in one of those copies of the gene, it's not working properly. It generally doesn't affect your health. You're a carrier, you can go your whole life without ever knowing that. But if your partner is a carrier for the same disease, then there's a 25% chance that the child would inherit both of those non-working genes and then have the condition. So being a carrier is pretty normal. We all carry things, but when there's a double dose in a child, that's when the problem.
And I see a question here. How accurate is the genetic testing?
It's very accurate. So the way that the testing is done now, it uses something called a sequencing technology, meaning that in the laboratory, they extract DNA from either your saliva or your blood. We do our test on saliva, and they sequence a gene, meaning that they're looking at the gene top to bottom for any changes in the gene. And for most of the genes that we're looking at, the test is going to pick up 99% of carriers. Very accurate.
Okay, that's interesting. So let's say I've been married for 5 years. I already have 2 kids, considering another one. Is there a point right now for me to get tested, even if I already, thank God, have healthy children?
Yes. So I'll use the Golds as an example. So the Golds had a healthy son and didn't anticipate any problems, got pregnant with a little girl. They were so excited to be having a little girl. And then the little girl, was then affected with the condition. And so what happened is in the first pregnancy, then either they both passed on their normal gene or one their normal gene and one the gene for the condition, but their son was fine because he didn't have a double dose, and then it showed up in another pregnancy. So what we tell couples is, even if you have normal children that are unaffected, if your screening is not up to date, if you've not had the most up-to-date panel before you get pregnant again, you should get that more comprehensive panel done, because you just don't know.
And then give me an example. What would happen if this family or another family who has a double dose, potentially, if they did want additional family or additional children, what could they do?
Sure. So through our program, and really this would be appropriate for any way that you get screened, the next step after getting those results is to talk to a genetic counselor to go over with you, what do those results mean? What condition are we talking about? Is it something relatively mild and maybe treatable? Is it something that's really devastating with no treatment available, or somewhere in between, to understand what condition is in question? And then to talk about some options to plan ahead for your children. So one option would be, we're talking to Jewish Fertility Foundation today, so one option would be using in vitro fertilization, meaning that you take eggs from the mom's sperm from dad, fertilized outside of the body, and you can do genetic testing on those embryos for the condition that you're concerned about, and then choose the embryos that don't have that condition to use for the pregnancy, to transfer back into the mom to grow. So then you've gotten pregnant then with a baby that's not affected with the condition. And when that's done, there's usually some confirmatory testing through amniocentesis later. But so that's an amazing technology to try to get around that risk. Some people will use an egg or sperm donor from someone who's not a carrier. So you get around the double dose in that way. Some people decide to go ahead and hope for the 75%, go ahead and get pregnant, and then do prenatal testing, do testing on the pregnancy through CVS or amniocentesis to make sure that the baby's okay. And some people wait until after the child is born to test. Some people adopt. There are all sorts of options.
Sure.
But the only way you'd have all those options available is if you know before pregnancy that there's a risk.
And so your genetic counselors are going over the results and saying, this is something you can live with. This is something that is life-threatening, and they kind of lay it out for you as well as your options.
Yes.
Okay. Great. So I see here we have a question. How much does a test cost? And are there any ways to save on price?
So we wanted to make this really equitable for everybody coming through, because some people have high deductible health plans and some people's insurance policies may or may not cover genetic testing. So we have a program fee to come through that includes the testing and the genetic counseling. That's $149 if you use your insurance. We also have a self-pay rate of $349 if you don't use insurance, but it's the same for everybody. Sometimes we do have coupon codes that you can use that'll discount the test. Sometimes we go out to college campuses and we'll have subsidized screenings, but for the most part, it's $149 per person. So it would be $300 for a couple.
Great. And I see another question. Should I do this before I get married? Should I do this even before I'm starting to think about having kids? Is there, relevance there?
So I say there's not an absolutely perfect time, but it should be before pregnancy. So we don't test anybody under 18. We don't want to screen any minors. But if you're 18 or older, whenever you feel like it's appropriate for you, we do college screenings. So, people are 18 to 21. We do a lot of screenings for, let's say we go out to federations, we do community events. We do a lot of marketing. I mean, right now we're not going out and doing any in-person events, right?
Right.
Most of what we do is done remotely. But yes, anywhere between 18 and 45, but before you get pregnant.
Got it. So we get these questions a lot. I'm not sure if you do. Within Jewish law, obviously there are different ranges and different denominations and different understanding, but are there ways to stay within Jewish law to prevent a disease when both partners are carriers?
Yes. So it depends on which rabbi you talk to, but there are options that are acceptable. Most rabbis will tell you that in vitro fertilization is an option that halachically is acceptable. When you're talking egg or sperm donors, it just depends. In some situations that is an acceptable option.
Mm-hmm.
People are concerned about it. I'd really recommend bringing your rabbi into the discussion, or a rabbi, even better, a rabbi who's well versed in this area.
Amazing. That's helpful. And we can also at Jewish Fertility Foundation help connect you with the rabbi and kind of, make that connection as well to somebody that you feel comfortable with. So let's say somebody listening here, never heard about JScreen, is really interested. Perhaps a parent is interested in getting it for their child. What would they do? How do they get connected to you? How do they get connected to the actual test?
So everything is online. So if you're interested in doing JScreen yourself, you go online to JScreen.org and you get information about what the testing is all about. It'll say, click here to start registering, and you for a screening kit. We'll ask you for some information, your name, your address, how to get in touch with you. Do you have any family history of genetic problems? You enter your doctor's name, your insurance information. Our genetic counselors review that information. It takes about no more than 8 minutes to sign up. The genetic counselors review that. We get an order from your doctor, unless you're in Georgia. We don't need that. And we'll send you a spit kit in the mail. It is so easy. You get your kit, you open it up, you spit in a tube, you put the packaging back in, you throw it in FedEx. That it's prepaid postage to FedEx. It goes out to the laboratory. The laboratory reports results back to JScreen, and when the results are ready, you'll get an email from our genetic counselor saying your results are ready. Click here to schedule your remote genetic counseling appointment, which is done either by phone or secure video conferencing. It is super easy. The whole process is taken care of from home. And after the genetic counseling, we'll send a report back to you and also to the doctor, to your referring doctor.
Very helpful. This has been quite informative. It's appreciated.
About the parents, about the parents gifting a test. I think.
Yeah, tell us about that.
I'll tell you about that. So we thought that we got a lot of questions from parents saying, I want to help cover the cost of testing. I want to encourage my kids to get tested. I want healthy grandchildren. And so if you go into our website, if you're a parent of a child who's of reproductive age and you want to gift a test to them, it's called JGift, but you can go, of course, but you can go online and purchase a test. And so that when your child goes in to register for a kit, they just enter a code that you've gotten as a gift for them, and they don't have to pay themselves for the test. It's a very nice gift.
It sounds like a very nice gift.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Very informative. If they would like to get in touch directly with a staff person from your organization, I presume it's all online.
They can info@jscreen.org if
Awesome.
you want to know, or just go to our website.
Amazing. Thank you, Karen. We really appreciate it. To recap, for those of you who are just signing on now, Jewish Fertility Foundation is here to help. Let's say you do find out that you actually have some sort of genetic carrier and you need our assistance through fertility treatments. Actually, our grants now in Atlanta are up to $15,000, and currently our grants in Cincinnati are up to $7,500. In addition, all of the fertility clinics we partner with offer a 20% discounted rate. Additionally, this is hard. You know, getting screened and finding out information can also be challenging, but we want to make sure we're providing you with as much information so you can make an informed decision about your future for your family. We also offer free infertility support. It's free. It's open up to anybody regardless of religious background. Our information is at jewishfertilityfoundation.org. We also, thanks to our partnership with the Marcus Foundation, are able to offer all of our grantees. We've given out 42 grants so far, free JScreen tests. We think it's very, 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 very important to not only help grow families, but also to bring healthy families into this community. So thank you, Karen. We appreciate your time. Any questions, please reach out to us.
Thanks, Elana.
Thank you.